I have the privilege tonight of calling this meeting to order. Would you please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the reason I called the meeting to order is because we need to nominate and elect the board chair, which happens after the first regular meeting after elections. And we had a meeting in November that was rescheduled from prior to elections. So we did not do that in November, given that it was a special meeting. So to start tonight, I would like to know if there is a motion for any members to be our new board chair.
I move that Keith Hines be elected as board chair.
I will second that motion. Is there any discussion?
You're okay with that?
Sure. Any further discussion? Would we, hearing a motion and a second for Keith Hines as the board chair, could we vote on that?
What are we voting for?
All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Hines, it's your meeting now.
Excellent. At this point, I'll open the floor for nomination election for vice chair. I hear any nominations.
Wow. Well, I just was. I can do it again this year.
I will nominate Mr. Cruz for the position of vice chair.
Motion and a second for Mr. Cruz. Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none, all in favor of Mr. Cruz? Opposed? That is unanimous. I guess my only comment is I'd like to thank the board for giving this opportunity again. I've enjoyed being here. Look forward to another year of fun and excitement. Brings us to item 6, approval of the minutes from October 4th and November 15th. Those minutes were forwarded to the board for review before the meeting.
Point out that on page 5, down near the bottom, it says Mr. McDaniel asked if, and there was a blank line and a half. Do not remember what I asked if at the time.
Number 2.
So, Mr. McDaniel, if you turn to the next page, at the very top is the actual comment. Just that paragraph one needs to be struck because it was reiterated in when I typed it.
Paragraph that starts with Mr. Cruz needs to be struck.
Right here is the,
Needs
here,
to be
that's-
inserted, asked if.
right, that just is the, see, here's the,
Okay, so we need to strike the word Mr. McDaniel restated that,
yes.
or do we just strike Mr. McDaniel asked it in which paragraph is
That's,
it? And accurately reflects.
Just ask if, and then if we just insert, strike the Mr. McDaniel reiterated. So the board knew that amount, and then followed by who we want to allocate.
Mr. Hines
that.
asked.
Okay, is the board clear on that too? The way the minutes reflect, I interrupted clearly. I looked it up.
I will send the revised minutes.
Any other revisions?
I move we accept that then as amended.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. We do have one adjustment to the agenda. We are going to take item 12.3, sorry, 12.3.1, review of policy JFABA, and move it to item 15.8 because it relates to our discussion under new business, so we'll hold off on revising the policy until we actually have the discussion. Any public comment? Seeing none? Brings us to item 9, staff report. We have Mr. Schultz and a number of his wise fifth graders here to talk to us about Chewonki.
Thank you. So I will preface our conversation by first saying to Mrs. Thompson, yes, I know I'm being recorded this time, so I will make sure that my comments are appropriate for recording. Poor choices. Record it. So I would like to say, I would first like to say that thank you. This another year of just spectacular performance by our students, and I just get richer and richer every year when taking these kids into the woods. Emotionally richer, not financially richer, every time we get into the woods, and it's just a special moment. So we started this year with what's beautiful about the school is that I'm given the breadth of working in an odd way and how I work with kids and trying to figure out what works best with the students that I'm working with. And we started our year looking at how we do business, our guiding questioning, how do we do business at West Bath School, and deciding what works in our classroom and how do we create a culture of performance and high quality work in our school. And then we headed out into the woods and learned about the world. And then we came back and we have a new guiding question for our full expedition that's how can I alter the environmental impact of my choices on places that are important to me. And I think every student in our class came back knowing that Chewonki is a place that's important to them now, and Midcoast is seen in a new way. And I think that's really powerful for all of them. I think you'll see that in a few moments. And as we continue, we'll focus on how we look at the waste in our school, how we grow food here, how do we find food locally, how do the students drive what they eat, and how they use resources that are within our school. So though it's expensive, this opportunity creates a platform for me to talk to students in a way that I think they normally don't have a voice. So we appreciate that. And from here on out, it is all their gig. This is them and their parents and a few conversations with me, so I turn it over to the students.
Our presentation is going to be about Chewonki, and I'm Lisa, and that's Mackenzie.
I don't like 10-year-olds getting on my computer, so.
So, we're going to talk about our experience at Chewonki Campground. I already said that. So, why we think Chewonki is important is because when we woke up, we always had a variety of different chores we had to do. Like, we had to make food for the group, and we collected wood and water, and then we cut the wood. And we did our own dishes after we ate every meal. So we think that we learned to take care of ourselves and help out around our houses and like do dishes and stuff in our house. And we got to learn about a whole bunch of other things. Like we got to take care of animals, we learned about milking cows, and we learned about different microorganisms that lived in the pond. And we knew we were safe the whole time because our guides made sure we were safe. So these pictures are kind of like, that's at the farm when we were milking the cows. And then that's when we were like making food and doing our chores. And then the high helmets. Well, we were safe because we were wearing harnesses and we were being anchored the whole time.
Okay, at Chewonki we chose to use the code of character. Some of the traits we used were respectful and responsible. For example, the reason we were respectful was because if we were not, or we would not have been, we might have not caught onto directions that were given to do an activity. And so when we went to do that activity, we would not have known what to do, and we could have ended up hurting ourselves or somebody else. The reason we were responsible was because if we were asked to take out a task that we needed to be able to be trustworthy, so our group would know that they would be able to trust us and that we could do it. So these are some of the tasks that we were doing. So this is Jaden and Mackenzie carrying the water down to our campsite. That's Kylie and Emma H, who are sweeping the barn out after we did like an hour and a half of work there. Thank you.
So we used Habit of Scholarship. We used preparedness and self-directed learning on an everyday basis, because if we weren't prepared, then we might not have worn the safe choice of clothing. So if it was going to rain that day, we might have wore a sweatshirt and we would have got wet. Or if we were going to the pond, we had to bring an extra change of shoes in case we got wet. And we had to be self-directed to stay on task and not fooling around, and be in charge of our behaviors and our belongings, and make sure we had enough to keep us full, safe, and hydrated.
So thank you for supporting our trip to Chewonki. We hope you continue to support this expedition learning, and thank you.
Questions on the board?
Welcome. Any questions of the students or myself? Certainly entertain.
So I have a question for the students. So it's been a couple of months since you've gone, right?
Yes.
And do you guys still find yourselves putting things into practice that you learned while you were there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you really clean up at home.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll work on it.
Something maybe a conflict? Other questions from the board?
Is this something you'd like to see continued?
Yes. Yes, very
Next year's
much.
class?
Very much.
Why? Evidence.
Well, because I feel that this gives students a way to understand what being out in the wilderness and getting to know the environment, like getting dirty. Like it gives you a sense of bonding with the earth.
What's one thing you learned to do at Chewonki that you didn't think you could do before?
Milk a cow.
Or a high walk.
Walk a mile and a half every day.
Spend 5 days in the woods with 10-year-olds.
2 years in a row.
I would say it was great for me.
Mrs. Jacobs is really going to miss me.
So last year we did a larger group. I would suspect more division there because of that. This year, a smaller group. From your perspective, which is the ideal?
Having a larger group or a smaller group, you mean? Or well, what they do, what Chewonki does a wonderful job of doing is making sure that how they manage the group at Chewonki still feels like the same close community experience. So even though we had 30 kids last year out of 2 classes, and this year we had 19 out of 1 class, they still both had an experience of 10 or 9 students there with the entire time. It's spread out from any other experience with the other students. So it was still the same small community experience. So they ramp up, of course, the cost of having another human being involved in that experience. But this year we had 2 guides and 2 camps. And we had 10 in one group and 9 in one group. So the experience, knowing that my students are here and the dynamics shift when you move kids around. So I'll say that yes, there were some complications having a smaller group and having fewer kids to spread out amongst the groups. Chewonki makes sure that the experience, and Keith Crowley, who I'm going to be working with tomorrow night to extend some of our relationships with Chewonki, his statement is every kid goosebumps every day. And they make sure that that happens. There might be goosebumps in every kid every day, but that's the gist of it. So they make sure that that same experience is happening, whether there's 50 kids that are showing up or whether there's 10 kids that are showing up. So I personally, as the chaperone, did not notice the difference between last year or this year. And I think that's what they can really hang their hat on.
How about when you return back to the school in terms of rapport and team building? Do you see any difference between?
For me as a teacher, or for I think we actually just had I think speaking honestly, we just had a tough conversation yesterday about how we've had a tough start to the year. It was a shared experience because we are such a mobile class at the beginning of the year and doing a lot of things, and then I went to national conference, and then we had this little power outage thing that happened for a while, and then I got sick right afterwards, so I didn't have the traditional ramp up that I would normally have. So just yesterday, we had a really tough conversation between all of us where I could own where I had not been the best I could be, and they had not been the best they could be because we had not had the consistency. But I don't think I could do that with a class that hadn't slept in the woods for a week and had those tough choices. So it was a quiet conversation, and today it was a very different day today. And I think that comes from the fact that we spent some tough days in the woods and got to know each other, and we understand what the expectations are, and we hope that carries on. So that's what it gives me a chance to be a better teacher, and it gives them a chance, I think, to be better young adults.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Thank you guys for sharing. That was great for us to be able to see and hear your perspectives as well.
I also have one comment, Mr. Schultz. You said yesterday that it wasn't really a conversation. It was, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do, and you are going to do it.
There are those points. In a teacher's career where I swear to God he's right. I said, we're going to have a conversation about it. I stopped right there and I said, actually, what's going to happen is I'm going to tell you some things. You're going to listen, and when you earn the responsibility of sharing a conversation, that will happen. But right now, it's going to be a telling piece. So yes, we had about 20 minutes of me standing on the pulpit, and today was that. Thank you.
I certainly thanks to
We'll take honesty out of our curriculum.
certainly thank you to the students for coming in this evening, parents for bringing them in, and again, thank you to Mr. Schultz for giving up a week of your time with your family, to spend a week in the woods with our students. And I see a comment from the public.
As a graduate of West Bath School a few years ago, and a grandmother now of Paxton, I just want to say as a taxpayer, I am always excited to support the school budget. And it's for these kinds of reasons. I think West Bath School offers our children an exceptional experience, K through 5. But as these young people are heading into middle school and needing to take more responsibility for themselves, I think it's an outstanding opportunity that you provide the children in West Bath. So I just want to thank you for that.
Very well, moving on. Thank you very much. they're all gonna stay. I'm learning some You feel free to run away. Take a break.
You stay, you're staying.
Oh, dang
Kids straight to bed, right?
Brings us to item 10, committee reports. 10.1 policy committee. I don't think we have anything to update at this point. Plugging away. Policies as needed. 10.2 technology committee. No updates in technology committee. 10.3 facilities committee.
Just a quick update to let you know that the alarm system update has been started and is supposed to be finished tomorrow. It's taken them several days of internal wiring to just make sure that all the doors are all set to go. So that project is near completion.
10.4.1 10.4 policy committee. 10.4.1 we reviewed payroll warrants on October 3rd, October 17th, November 1st, November 14th, and November 28th. 10.4.2 AP warrants. Dennis and I both reviewed those on 10.6, 10.20, 11.9, and again on 11.21. Brings us to item 11, superintendent's report.
Beginning with the financial report, you have your current operating budget in front of you through the end of November. And in simple terms, with 58.3% of our year remaining, we have 71.58% of our budget remaining. So we are in good shape. If you look through every line item, you'll actually see that our lines are all tracking exactly as they should be, if not better. I want to bring your attention to page 7. Looking at the library, you'll see that we have salaries, professionals, that's been 84.56% expended, and then salaries, substitutes is overexpended, 2 lines below. Just want to remind you that we had a resignation of our librarian before the start of the school year, and so the expenditures in the salary line were paying for last year's contractual obligations, and that we've had a long-term sub through this point now, and so that's being paid out of that line, and that line will be overexpended. But if you look at the bottom, for the overall account, we still have 74.81% of our library budget remaining. Other than that, I don't see any lines that would cause any questions at this time. If there are questions, I'm happy to take them. Great, moving on then. In terms of district updates, the first is that I provided you with an updated calendar for your records. This is the calendar that's based upon the adjustments that were made and voted on at the last meeting. You'll see the revisions approved in the bottom right-hand corner with the date there. And so this has been put up on our website the next day, and parents have been informed, and we will continue to adjust it and make it available as we make adjustments moving forward as necessary. So that is for your records.
How was attendance on the changes we made so far? Has there been any negative?
There has not been any negative impact. I think that the predictions of parents being pleased having their children here all day were correct predictions. Students were present for the full day before we broke for Thanksgiving. There have been a couple questions around January 2nd in terms of plans that had already been made, but just as we did for the November date, if people have plans, then so be it. We've changed the calendar, and we're not, absences will be. Okay, so next we're looking at our October 1st enrollment, and it's interesting to have this conversation now that it's December. But the reason it's October 1st is because that is the enrollment that gets reported to the state each year and gets certified on October 31st. And so typically we'd review this in November. But then with the power outage, we didn't have the capacity to do the reporting to the state. And so that didn't happen until actually it was just certified this past week. So even though these are October 1 numbers, they've already changed. Families have come and gone and moved forward. But just to keep it consistent each year, this is what we're looking at. If you look at the top portion, you can see the breakdown for students at West Bath School. This year we have 127 students that are enrolled at the school. And that's pre-K through 5. And then you can see the number of residents, school choice from RSU on tuition students, The category column of siblings are the students who are here as agreed upon siblings through the park tuition program, and then superintendent agreements is the final column. So when you add all those together, we have 127 students, and you can see the grade level breakdowns for each of those. The next group is looking at our students in 6 through 12 in RSU 1, and we have 42 students at the 6 through 8 level and 50 students at the 9 through 12 level, which is 92 students in total. Then the next group is looking at students who are attending school elsewhere other than RSU 1, and there are 16 students in total, although 5 of those students attend charter schools. So we have 229 students who are West Bath students in K-12, who, if we're not including charter schools, and 234 if we do. Thinking about changes from last year then, our overall student numbers are down by 5, and you can see that that's a decrease of 2.36% from last year. But when you look at how that is made up, a big percentage of that is from having fewer pre-K students this year as compared to last year. We have 7 fewer students, and that's, when you're talking about small numbers, that's a big percentage. And then our other big change is at the 9 through 12 level, where we have 10 fewer students than we had this time last year. But actually, at the K2 and K8 levels, we have more students, just the way that it works out. So the net loss is 5 fewer students. On the budgetary side of this, then, we have budgeted for 51 students at the middle school level and 68 students at the 9 through 12 level. And so there's 11 students that we had planned for that we don't currently have, which is a positive on the budgetary standpoint. So those are the numbers as of October 1, and then I'll update them again when we get ready for our budget process in March.
May I ask what the other is underneath?
The other is a student who is not enrolled in public or private schools in Maine, but that we had approved for school choice,
Okay.
and that didn't have a category that I could fit them into for my accounting. The student in the other category and also in the charter category, they don't count towards our student count and our subsidy. We don't pay costs for students who go to charter schools, but we do pay costs for students who are in the other category, but we don't have them counted as our student count. Okay. Next on our agenda, I wanted to just take a moment to come back to the Yale National Conference. We had attended the national conference in November, and we arrived back at midnight that night that the power went out, so we returned to then the week-long power outage. And I didn't want it to go unnoticed that Mr. Schultz and Mrs. Jarvis had presented their mindfulness work in front of a very large national audience. I think the conference had about 1,200 people, and their breakout group had like 60 people in it. It was a very popular group. Some of the comments from their masterclass were that, your work is amazing, keep sharing, so many helpful tips, your protocols feel useful and flexible, very well organized and has lots of practical uses. Thank you for sharing your amazing work. This was informative and applicable. I did bring their course reviews if you're interested. You're welcome to access those copies throughout the meeting or after the meeting. But I wanted to just take a moment to again thank Mr. Schultz and Mrs. Jarvis for being willing to put themselves on a national stage and share their work. It's risky to do because you don't ever know how your work is going to be received beyond just your little world between these walls. But it's always very rewarding to get that feedback from such a large group to hear that the work you're doing has real value. So I thank them for their work and for representing us well. This is also from our November board meeting that I wanted to bring to the board, even though it is late, that we had participated in a program called Read to Ride this summer that is set up by the Maine Freemasons. And the Freemasons and the Department of Education sponsor a summer reading program that if students read for 500 minutes and send that back their form to school, that we then draw student names to be eligible for winning a bike. And then the Freemasons selected 24 girls and 24 boys from across the state to win a bicycle and a helmet, and 2 of our students were elected. A second grader Noah and a 5th grader Mackenzie were both had their names drawn to be able to win bikes. And then one of our students, Mackenzie, said, this is fantastic, but I already have a bike. And she gave the group another opportunity to have another name drawn. And so a 1st grader, Maggie, was able to earn a bike out of Mackenzie's generosity. We also took the moment to recognize another first grader, Cooper, who had read 1,765 minutes this summer, above his 500 minutes that were required. And so we gave him a mustard seed bookstore gift certificate for $10 to just continue his love of reading. But it's a great program that the Department of Ed and the Freemasons have helped us to support. We're already encouraging summer reading, and this just adds on to that. So I'd like to thank them for their support.
Anyone's interested, that's 29.4 hours.
That's a lot of reading. Thank you. All right, when you review your board goals later in the packet, I think the first goal is unwavering support towards EL credentialing. And I'm very excited to let you know that after submitting our data to determine whether or not we are eligible to apply for credentialing, we have just found out that we are eligible and approved to move forward, which is a very exciting news and a big deal. Because what they had to look at for to determine whether or not you can continue is all of your state data in reading and math ahead of the state in terms of your overall performance, but also all your subcategory performances. So your students who receive lunch subsidy, your students who have special needs, are you ahead of the state in all those categories? And we were able to show that we were for 3 years in both reading and math. We also had to submit data for showing that our students work on character and scholarship. And that's data that we've been collecting and working on for several years. We had great evidence to show where our students had started and where they are now, and we'll continue to work that data over the next year. And we also had to show that we had made gains in the area of high quality work. And we do that by doing student work protocols and looking at the work that comes out of their expedition cycles. And so we had evidence to be able to support the growth that we've made in having students create high quality work. So our next round of work is due March 1st. And for that, we need to submit claims in each of those areas of achievement. So the knowledge and skills, the character, and high quality work that show sort of our journey over the last several years, where we started and where we are now. We have to make claims in those areas and then have evidence to support those claims. So there's a tremendous amount of work to be done to get to the next step, but it's extremely rewarding. It's what we've been working towards, and we're very excited to be able to have some time to reflect on where we've come and where we're going next. Wanted to
That would be fully credentialed.
So if on March, if our claims are approved to move forward, then the next step is we have to put together our final portfolio. That portfolio has to be submitted by June 1st, and then over the summer we have to present first locally to the main group and then to the national group to show that we stand behind everything that's in our work, and then we would find out if we are credentialed at the next national conference in October.
So
And
you're
then,
pointing
yes.
towards October next.
We are. But we are on track. We passed the first big hurdle, which was, yes, we believe you're ready.
Excellent.
Next on the agenda, we had discussed that it would be important to have an update on power outage losses from the week that we were without power. And I think I'm happy to report that our only losses, the only damages from the power outage are just in the area of lost food. And while I don't like that we lost food, we had no other damage to the building, we had no other repairs that stemmed from having electricity off for the week. But you can see that in the inventory sheet that I gave you that our food loss overall was $1,183.51. Which is a significant amount, and I know that the finance committee in reviewing our warrants can see that our food expenses are higher than they typically have been, but for good reasons. We need to be able to replace the food that we've lost. So just to keep you informed of the process, I have provided this information to the town administrator, and he's included it with the town's damages and claims with the work that he did for FEMA and NEMA. And then the governor has requested disaster relief from the federal government. And that if that is approved and signed and if funds are made available, then a year from now we might expect to be able to get some reimbursement for these losses. If those funds are not approved, then he would talk with municipal management and talk about filing insurance claims. But he's not at that step yet. It depends on what happens with the
There's a lot of pictures.
But it does mean that we need to pay close attention to our food expenses and our food service budget moving forward, just to make sure that we can cover the unanticipated losses. So we'll keep monitoring that. The next item in your packet is an article that was in the Forecaster on November 30th. And this article is written about a meeting at the Brunswick School Department where the headline says that Brunswick schools will consider consolidation with another district. And if you read through the article, it talks about that perhaps West Bath is that district that Brunswick is going to consolidate with. So I just brought this to your attention because I had several emails and phone calls and inquiries, some with concerns, some with, oh, we're talking about consolidation, and some excitement around that. And I wanted to let you know that the article isn't exactly, the events of the meeting aren't exactly how it's portrayed in the article. So I did call the Brunswick Superintendent's office that day and asked some questions. And they had a meeting about what are the different organizational structures of school districts, you know, through AOSs, through RSUs, through the SMLCs, through some of the Embrace funds, what are ways that schools can look to share funds. And so out of that conversation, one of the members said, I think we should talk about continuing to work with West Bath. And you can see through looking at the article where that, where his comments went. But the Brunswick Assistant Superintendent has clarified that, they're not looking for consolidation, they're not looking for regionalization. They are, like we are, always looking for ways to partner and to collaborate. And we've had several conversations over the last year about ways that we can support one another. So that will continue regardless of what the article says or doesn't say. So I did just want to make sure that you knew that that was out there and that wasn't really a topic that was being discussed in terms of what the Brunswick School Department was discussing. Are there any questions about that or concerns? Okay. Then moving forward, I want to let you know of some upcoming events. First is that we have our Hour of Code tomorrow with Mr. Bodish and Ms. Barker, who's our library substitute. And so what Hour of Code is, it's a global event where all communities are asked to sponsor a 1-hour coding event open to the public to encourage families to be involved in computer science. Last year it was heavily attended. I think there were 35 people or so in attendance. I expect it'll be the same for tomorrow. So that will be tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Bodish, for volunteering to take that on for us, for hearing the excitement around it. Also want you to be aware that our community celebration of learning is coming right up. As you know, you extended it on our calendar, so I know you know it's coming on December 21st from 3 to 4 o'clock. So this is your official invitation to please come to our celebration of learning. I feel like we haven't had a lot of opportunity to talk about the work that's happening in expeditions right now, just by nature of having lost some time and having November's meeting being shortened. We've had an incredible experience, particularly with experts in fieldwork this time around. And Maine author Lynn Ford, who is a Maine Student Book Award author, was here recently just working with our students. And then this Friday, Maine's poet laureate Stuart Kestenbaum will be here to work with students to talk about his inspiration for writing poems, to give kids feedback on their poetry. I really encourage you to come to our celebration and take a look at the work that the kids are doing. So add that to your agenda if possible. Also be aware that next week we have 2 concerts. December 12th at 5:30 is our 4th and 5th grade concert, as well as the chorus and band. And on the 14th, the K-3 students will be performing at 5:30. Some of us get to go to both concerts. So that'll be next week. And then the Friday is our Little Elf Shop, which is sponsored by our parent-teacher organization, which is now called Community Crew. And what the Little Elf Shop is, they spend a year collecting a variety of objects that then are organized in our library, and students can shop for their families for $1 an item, and they all get wrapped and they go home, and it's an incredibly festive and joyful day. We're always looking for wrapping volunteers. If you would like to be a wrapper, just let me know.
What day is that?
It is the 15th, Friday, and it's all day. What's that? You have to be an approved volunteer, and if you're not, I will provide you with a volunteer approval sheet. And then the final update is I'm pleased to let you know that we once again are recipients of the ExxonMobil Math and Science Grant of $500. And these funds are for math and science enrichment. And in the past, we've used them to support expeditions. We've used them to purchase robotics equipment. It's something that we are very appreciative of being able to receive from ExxonMobil. So I'd like to thank them for that.
Excellent.
That's it.
Any questions on any of that stuff? Great stuff. Brings us to item 12.1, Child Development Services update.
So my purpose in adding this to the agenda is to continue to provide you with an update from our last conversation around CDS. And I've continued to follow the advisory meetings that are happening at the state level. They meet weekly. Their final meeting is scheduled for December 11th. And from that December 11th meeting, they then are going to be proposing a funding plan for long and short term, and a plan for facilities, a plan for staffing, and a plan for regionalization opportunities if possible. And then out of that plan, they begin to write the legislation. So this is moving fast and it's something that I've tried to stay on top of. I have provided you with minutes from the November 13th meeting because I feel like if you look at the discussion column, they've identified areas where they have questions and concerns. Studying food and nutrition, playgrounds, classroom space, supplies, equipment, teacher space, bathrooms, accessibility, fire codes, storage, pickups and drop-off, therapy, training, the lunch program. The rules are different for 3 and 4-year-olds than they are for 5 through 12th graders. Talk about how the ADA requirements, the playgrounds have to be different. On the third page, the approximate cost for preschool classrooms is about $22,000. These are all concerns that don't have answers, but yet we're already moving to the part of talking about writing legislation. These meetings are public, the final meeting, like the others, they are public. We need to be paying close attention because ultimately I think that if we have a few years to plan for this, this is a great idea. But if this has to be planned in for our budget for next year, then we need to be very mindful of all those things that we need to consider. So again, the purpose of having this on the agenda is to provide an update. I'm happy to engage in discussion if you need to, or would like to. That's all I have for now on that.
Certainly something we need to keep an eye on. The budget ramifications for this are potentially large. And we may even want to consider, give another month to play out in committee, but we may want to take a position and draft a letter to our rep, our state senator, one way or the other. Guessing what direction that letter will probably go, but we'll see what the next month brings, and we'll talk about it. Item 12.2, SMLC update.
Okay, in October, we also talked extensively about SNLCs. And I wanted to just again update you that the first round of applications was due November 30th. So that was just a few days ago. And when we last discussed the topic, we determined that West Bath really didn't have interest in being trailblazers, and that to sit back and not focus your attention on that. And if an opportunity came that made sense, that we would discuss it at the board level and go from there. So the consensus around the state had been that districts were not going to put their name in, that they were going to just sort of take the wait and see approach. And then, I guess not surprisingly, the day before applications were due, the Cumberland County districts all decided that they needed to come up with some plan for putting forth applications. So what came from that then is that I got a call from Brunswick and Freeport and Topsom on the 30th, the day applications were due, asking if we would like to consider talking about SMLCs. And the Part A applications are supposed to be non-binding. So it was something that I considered for a brief moment and thinking about, is this worth us putting our name attached to this application, or is there a risk involved? I did contact MSMA to just ask what the general sense of the state was, if it still was that people were holding back. And the response I got from the director was that districts in Cumberland County were putting their applications in because they were non-binding, but mostly to see what that's going to do for their subsidy if they don't continue to go into Part B. And he suggested, like we talked about before, that if it doesn't make sense for your district, then don't move forward. He also said that the executive committee was meeting the following day and they were beginning the legislation to undo the whole process for SNLCs. So that there was that too. I also talked with our board chair, and given that we couldn't call a meeting to have this discussion, And given that the focus of the regional center was going to be on credit recovery for high schools, which doesn't apply to us, and regional professional development, which doesn't apply to us at this moment because of EL, it didn't make any sense for us to attach our names to this, and we decided to not continue and to stick with the direction of the board last time we had the conversation about it. So the state has reported that 100 districts, so less than half, more than a third, did put in Part A applications. And again, MSMA maintains that that was just to see what's going to happen with the subsidy, but that they're feeling pretty confident that the whole process is going to have a breakdown in the next round. So it's something to just continue to watch, but know that we did not move forward with being committed to an SNLC. But I didn't have the authority to do so without the board's approval as it was, but it didn't make sense for us given the last moment shutdown.
12.3 removed, that brings us to 12.4, board goals. Remember back in, I think it was October, we brought this back. Ideally, these will be used to shape our budget. The budget will start getting shaped now. A March rollout. Want to give the board an opportunity to, again, review them, see if we want to make any changes to them. Say, says the board. Any thoughts, one way or the other?
This is, the board came up with this when?
2 years ago.
No, these are
These are
five
for
days.
I mean, we.
October of last
Right, right.
But I think it's the first round. Tweaked it.
I'll start. Unless you have.
No, I was just going to say that obviously we've got some goals now on the first point, but really want to look at the constantly advocate for the needs of the WVSAU to develop positive partnerships with all county partners. And actually, I think the power outage is providing us with some very positive opportunities to do so, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later on in the meeting. Everyone's talking and everyone's concerned. Particularly, I had, for instance, a conversation with Adam where we briefly touched on what would have happened in February if we had had that length of power outage and what kind of damage could have resulted to the school, which made everybody shudder. So I think there are opportunities there, very good.
The one thought that I had was actually on the second bullet point. Now that we've had the programs for 2 full years, is it appropriate to keep referring to the success of the programs? Or do we want to call out, call them out, call the two, the boat building and Chewonki out specifically as the goal is to maintain our level of support or something like that.
I can follow that logic.
Questions?
Other thoughts on
We've now had Chewonki for 2 years and we're engaging in
I guess-
the second year of
I guess that's true.
if you want to do specifically this Chewonki, I think that's fine. I think it might be appropriate to wait on the other one. I've got great confidence that it will be as well received, but
Yeah, I think in hindsight now, addressing that wording is probably more appropriate next year rather than now.
I'm wondering if on the last point, because if I recall correctly, a part of the reasoning for the school lunch not specifically being addressed was because of our budget restraints. And I'm a little bit hesitant with all the CDES things that are happening that we're sort of unsure about if we should remove such specific wording from that goal, as opposed to keeping it in there and then just having to push it off for another because of constraints that we really don't have any idea of right now. I'm just wondering if the broad wording of just the developing the policy and encouraging opportunities isn't sufficient enough without having to have quite such specific bullet points listed under.
I also feel like the final bullet point with the review the success of recent pilot programs kind of is the same as evaluating the success of the new 5th grade programs. So it seems kind of silly to have it in 2 different places or and I wasn't here when this was developed, so maybe I'm wrong and it's talking about something completely different, but it seems to me that we're evaluating the success of new programs in general.
I would, on the bullet point thing, I would argue that it's better to have some specific points there because the top level statement is, I think, too generic to really be a goal. Even if that goal isn't achievable in the next year, if it's something that we as a board are still interested in doing, I think it's important to keep it there just for visibility purposes. I think in my particular case, I would be with the school lunch program. That my concern is if we drop that off of board goals, it ceases to be a board goal. Right, and it's something that we thought about at one point, but no longer have as a goal.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Is it realistically a goal for 7 years?
Like I
just
said,
sort
my
of think
concern
that-
is removing it means that it never comes back. You know, at one point we were talking about expanding foreign language, but that hasn't been a visible goal, for 2 years now.
We could talk about 1, 2, and 3 year goals too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I sort of feel the opposite. I feel if we keep them on there if we keep them on there continually year after year without addressing them, whether the reason for not addressing them is within our control or not, that it's sort of just like, oh, okay, well, another year.
It could become sort of a pro forma,
Yeah.
right, I understand that.
Are these board goals supposed to be goals for the board in general for years or for this year, this is the goal for board best? What's the point of this?
The theory is you update them every year before you do your budget. And it drives, it drives the superintendent,
So it's the goals for the
And
current
how-
year.
Yeah, nice.
what elements
Right.
you should look at when she's shaping her budget. Obviously, there are fixed things that have to be there.
Which is one reason I sort of advocate for keeping things that maybe we know aren't gonna fit in the budget, but keeping them as goals so that they do get looked at budgetarily every year.
And it could
Even if
be-
that's the first thing we
Yeah.
trim out.
Yeah.
It could be that 1 year, there's some sort of place in the budget to go with something. And then this gives us a chance, well, okay, what do we do with that something? Do we not do anything at all, or do we come back and address that goal and say, well, hey, this year we could, and then talk about the long-term effect of that. So I think it makes sense to have it in there.
So why would the foreign language program not be included? What was the discussion with that? I'm new to the group, so I'm not sure what the discussion was, but if that is
I
a
think
goal.
the only reason it isn't on the list is because no one raised it when we passed the list. Or it's somebody I don't remember, I have to go back and look at the minutes, or someone did think I voted down.
Well, and it's,
I don't think it got raised.
it's as much a personnel issue as anything. I mean, it's personnel and curriculum, and it's a long-term commitment. And some of the other things, I don't know, well, this is happening with the budget this year. And basically we have A lot of people concerned justifiably at the large increase in taxes. And it just seemed to be fiscally responsible to have that compared to some of the other goals we had.
Yeah, I think if history serves, we had some things in the first school budget, and that was before we did goals.
Yeah.
And so we had trimmed that out and then started looking at goals, so they'd already been gone. I think is the full history of that.
Wasn't foreign language something that we had also brought up as a topic of like a regionalization, exploring the opportunities for that?
Yes.
So I think that was another piece of it. We just didn't know exactly how it would
That-
fit.
Pretty much.
Anything on the list that people wanna see taken off? You could still make a motion and see if there's.
No, I myself,
Okay.
I'm not making.
Anything that people want to add?
Possibly. With the, sort of to go in with the partnerships with all town departments and keeping in mind that the recent storm with the power outage is possibly looking at concrete steps for contingency. I know that, you know, we've had around town informal talks about generator procurement, or the school building as a shelter, as a designated shelter area, things like that. Might that be something that we add to the goals to explore what those storm contingencies might be?
Again, I think that's going to come up in item 19, whatever it is, in there. And that may want to table this, or just simply work to readdress it next month when we have more information. It doesn't have to be finalized. This body could go back on the agenda for further modifications. Or you can add I mean, certainly not a problem. Obviously it brought to mind some major issues. Develop an emergency plan for emergencies to preserve school function and what else?
Right, going beyond the financial impacts, the sort of emergency management planning policies of the board. You know, we have plenty of policies for inclement weather, for things like that, but a disaster level extended outage, I think, is beyond what we currently have any kind of contingency for. And that's what I was thinking of possibly
Emergency management policies.
putting that in
Period.
as a goal to beef that up this year.
I like the idea of having that in there somehow.
I would make a motion that we add to this one of our goals be develop an emergency management and preparedness policy.
I will second adding.
You capture all that. Low emergency management and
Preparedness policy.
preparedness, thank you.
It happens, we have a superintendent who's been certified
Lucky us. Okay, we have a motion to develop an emergency management preparedness policy. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, we have a second as well, sorry, I missed it. Any discussion on that particular item? All in favor? Okay, that has been added as a board goal. Any additional changes to the document?
I've done enough damage.
I would throw out the idea of either revising the third bullet point or adding the fourth bullet point under the fourth bullet point. Something to the effect of explore appropriate cost-cutting partnerships with neighboring school districts.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I would suggest we do that as a fourth sub-bullet point of bullet point number, bullet point 4. So I will make a motion that we add, explore appropriate cost-saving partnerships. Make that motion, that we add that point.
Neighboring school, or just.
I don't think I want to limit it to that. If we could do something virtually, it doesn't necessarily have to be with a neighbor. I don't know what it would be, but why limit it to just,
That's why you're exploring it.
that's right. So there's a motion,
I'll
is there a second to that idea?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes, question.
Yes.
Just voted
We didn't really vote, I didn't count. What's your vote?
You're just waiting.
So the bullet says develop policy and encourage opportunities with the needs of our student in mind. The sub-bullet is looking at cost savings, which is certainly a need for our community. But does that mean that we don't explore options that are good for our students' needs if they have a cost associated with them?
I would argue they would not be appropriate cost savings if they did not take the needs of our students. That's why I used that. Do you agree with it?
I would agree with wording.
Are you comfortable with that?
Isn't
Can we put it as a separate bullet all by itself?
Wants to frame their goals is fine. I just wanted to clarify, ask that question.
If
Make sure I understood how to work with it.
we do something.
We could. I purposely wanted it buried under.
Right.
The way I view it, each student is first.
Yes.
Cost savings,
Okay.
just for it. Obviously, we gotta be concerned about taxes, but just simply doing something because it saves money and hurts students is not recommended.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor? I will then make a motion that we approve the board goals as amended. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Okay, at this point, I'm going to make a motion that we recess to executive session pursuant to Title I, Chapter 13, Section 4056A of the MRSA for the purpose of discussing a personnel issue.
Second.
We will be returning to general session after the executive session. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? We are in executive session, and I think instead of clearing the room, the board will just go to item 16.1. Board standing committee assignments. We have the facilities committee, which is Dennis and Ashley. We have the finance committee, which is Dennis and myself. We have the technology committee, which is Dennis and a vacancy. We have the policy committee, which is myself and Bob. And we have the negotiations committee, which is myself and Dennis. Typically, when we have a new board member, we did with Ashley, we plugged that person into the vacancy on the committees. I don't know if anybody else wants to shuffle up what committees they're on to take on the technology committee, or if Mary is comfortable serving on the technology committee. Anybody want to give up their current assignment or something?
What's the comprehensive needs assessment? Judy?
That'll be next thing we discuss.
I'm happy with my facility.
Are you okay on the technology?
I'll take on whatever I inherit.
I would be, yeah, I can give up my seat on facilities if you'd rather do that.
Can we?
I kind of like finance and the negotiations right now is sort of set.
And you would rather, or you want to do technology instead of
He's already on.
facility?
I'm already
You want
there,
to do
so-
comprehensive needs assessment.
No.
I'm good, we can just leave it at whatever. Unless
There are
somebody is
5
like,
listed
I really-
committees and my name is on 4 of them, so.
I wouldn't mind being on the facilities committee, but I don't,
You find filling out that spot in the facility?
I can do that's, but like I said, my name is on 4 of the 5, so
okay, so
if
Okay, so we'll
there's
put,
somebody that would take that one over, that would be good.
we'll
facilities.
put Mary on facilities, and Mary on technology. The technology committee has met an abundance of times.
Yeah, that one is very weighted.
And the comprehensive needs assessment committee.
We don't know yet.
But if you really ignore that one for a minute, and unless anybody objects, we're gonna say these are our committees. The policy allows the chair to put people on the committees. And so these are our committees, we're good.
But we approve the committees that we just designated.
We can. Motion, we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous. We also, we need a board member to represent the board on the comprehensive needs. I suggest we call it a group, because we haven't formed it as a board committee. We would just be a member on one of your groups. I know actually at one point in time you had just expressed interest in that. I don't know if anybody else has interest in that.
What is it exactly? What is-
So, we have a new directive from the state, which is a 28-page survey, which is a needs assessment for the district, which basically is data collection and monitoring, how your district is doing and setting goals for the district to share them with the state. So it's really putting together information from all different types of stakeholders. So parents will be part of the group, board members, teachers, administration, collecting data in all sorts of different ways to prepare the state document that's due in July, before July.
So this kind of like a steering group to help facilitate how that's all going to work.
It's a work group. It's a work group. And so we needed a board representation on the work group, and so Ashley had said, so you're right, it's not a committee, but it's board representation on the work group.
And how often?
That has not up and running yet because it's a new directive. So I can't answer that question yet. Probably going to be intense for a short period of time.
Something the state just threw on us.
Right.
Like I did today.
And you're interested.
I'll make a motion, Ashley serves as our representative to that group.
I second that motion.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Those are our committees. And those committees will stand until next reorganization meeting. 15.2, 15.2.1, hiring school nurse.
All right, I'm pleased to bring to you Susan Beauregard, who we interviewed in November. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, works as an RN at Midcoast Hospital in the Addiction Resource Center Intensive Outpatient Program. She's been a substitute school nurse. She's been a CNA, a child victim advocate, and AmeriCorps Vista volunteer, and a high school ed tech. So she brings a wide range of experiences into this position. The 1 day per week position would be something she would be doing in addition to the 4 days she works at Midcoast. So it works together with the position she currently has. It doesn't replace it, which I think is a benefit because it enhances our partnerships with local agencies. Her recommendations express that she's client-centered, which we can extrapolate to say that that'd be student and family and teacher-centered as well. She's enthusiastic, respectful, eager to learn, welcoming of constructive feedback, confident in her work, self-motivated, and has good diversity of experiences. You can see where her step and salary placement would be, and she'd start on December 15th if the board approves her hiring. There'd be 14 pays left in this fiscal year. You can see the amount that would be, and that is currently within our budget capacity.
move to approve the hire recommendation.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Item 15.3, school choice request. The board received an email from a parent outlining a bit of a unique situation. The family had applied for school choice, completed our application. The request was approved on our end. And we have just recently discovered that the school that the student was attending was not on the state approved list and therefore isn't eligible for receive state tuition payments. In that time, the individual younger child elected to attend a different school. And the request that's before us is that we take the approved school choice for the older child and apply it to the younger child. If the older child's school can't accept the money is available. So that's the question before us, is if we want to grant the request to shift that approval from one child to another. And I would ask out of respect and confidentiality for the students that we refrain from using names at this point. Comments?
Any question that's as far as what school this applied to?
I believe the request is, the tuition is on the approved list.
So
I
it's in
believe
the
the
state
school,
of Maine.
I believe the school is NYA.
Wondered. We had back and forth questions on that. That was left me somewhat confused.
So in your packet is the letter from the community member, as well as some email exchanges with the superintendent. Obviously, it's a bit of a unique situation. I feel like the school choice policy was followed. I think the policy is clear that the burden is on the parent to make sure the attending school is on the approved list. Nevertheless, so it isn't, and circumstances have changed, and the other child is on the school approved list.
Yeah, my concern with this unique situation is really kind of a precedence issue. That, that our school choice right now isn't set up really by family, it's by student. And if you take out the first part of the request, that they requested a school choice slot, they were granted the slot, and then they can't make use of the money because the selected school wasn't on the approved list. And you just look at the second situation of a child who started within the district and then transferred. For any other situation, our policies are pretty clear cut that the parents are welcome to apply for school choice funding for the following year, but the current year they've not made the application window. Just isolating the two things, that seems like a very clear-cut issue. And my concern would then be that we would be setting a different precedent for related members versus a separate
That would
trial
require
situation.
changing policy somehow.
I think we would.
Because otherwise, there's no provision in the current policy, basically, that cover this. So have to have a board action and change the policy.
Right, we would have to update the policy. And like I said, my concern is that while this seems like a unique situation, it might not necessarily stay that way.
I agree. I anticipated that question would come up. We just posed it to legal counsel. Legal counsel has developed some alternative language that we could use to adopt, modify our policy if that was what we chose.
Well then,
Shuts that window, does it not? Basically addresses the situation.
If we chose to approve the request and we're concerned about precedent, there's a way we can do that. Doesn't mean we have to. Doesn't mean there aren't other reasons to approve or not approve the request.
well, the other, go ahead.
Well, my concerns with this case individually, not upsetting precedent, because it looks like we've got that covered, is that it seems that things were changed very drastically from what had happened in years past, and I'm not sure anybody informed him of that, so that's what I feel like if things were very, very different, and he had done this before many times and he thought he was doing everything right, then probably somebody should have let him know that things were different, or it is his responsibility, but where he had no reason to believe that it was going to be different this year than it was in the past, I guess. So that's just where I'm. I can,
And that's,
but that's well, this is regretful that it happened. It's terrible. Somebody should have made him more aware, or I don't know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we then just say, okay, well, here, let's transfer the funds and make it better. But it is a concern.
I mean, well, for the transfer of the funds, I mean, that, on that side, we're looking at a zero financial impact. So financially, I don't know that we really have to concern ourselves with the financial side. It's sort of a policy issue.
Right. And but that's what I'm saying is where the policy changed, I feel like maybe it's on us that we should have let him know of the policy
But our
change.
policy never changed. Our policy,
The state policy.
how a school gets granted onto the state's approved list changed.
Right.
But our policy doesn't reference that at all. It just says the school must be on the approved list.
Which is public.
But so
Which is public.
like here where Emily had already mentioned that she said yes, he's all set. Did you know then that he was all set with the funding, but not that the school wouldn't be?
I did not. So what I knew at that time was, yes, he's been approved, because that's all that I'm responsible for.
Right.
But as I said in my email, I did not say.
You
at that
didn't
time-
say it, but I'm saying, did you know it? You didn't know it either. So I, like, in that case, I would say that if you had known it at that time, it would have been nice for us to say, oh, but by the way, you might want to look into this. But if you didn't, there was nothing.
The first notification came from the school itself saying, we contacted the state, we can't receive funds. I hadn't.
And you didn't know anything about it.
I hadn't
It's
looked at the
a-
list at the school, because that's not my responsibility.
right.
My responsibility is to relay our
Right.
policies. That doesn't mean that we can't make a different decision in this case.
Right.
I wish in retrospect my email had said, you are all set with being approved for school choice, and I didn't have those last few
But you, right.
words in my sentence.
Right.
The other precedence thing that concerns me on this one has to do with how we track school choice students from year to year. In that once you've been approved for going to a different school and being in the school choice program, that carries forward, guarantees, from year to year. In this case, that student hadn't been approved, and the application window doesn't come up until January. So we don't know if that slot is available for the next year. But we're guaranteeing the position. And what I mean is that everybody else has to go through the application, and if there are too many students that apply, there's a lottery selection. If in this case we would have a student sort of transferring their membership in the program to another student without bypassing the entire selection process. That concerns me.
Because theoretically, we don't know if this would have even been a covered scenario.
Well, what we don't know is if coming this next January, when that student would normally apply, if that student would face a lottery or under the cap. I don't have that information. But regardless of the specific thing, it would be a way to completely bypass. Let's say there was a numbers crunch there. It would be a way for it would be a way to bypass that whole selection completely and pass on to the younger siblings eligibility in the program without ever having to apply for the program.
Yes,
You
yes,
know what I mean?
yes, and if we revise the policy as suggested, we make it clear that transfer is no longer.
Right.
And
This.
we could address that issue in a motion to approve this particular circumstance.
Okay.
Something to the effect of, limit to this school year only, or specify in the
Right.
motion that they have to reapply according to policy in January.
Okay.
But I do share that concern with it as well. So if that's the direction we want to go, I think we need to have some wording in the motion.
That this
To
would be a
specify that
one-time
this is a one-time.
transfer. We're going to address it in the policy, and that this student would still be required to apply without the guaranteed continuation.
And I highly suspect that we will hit our school choice cap next year. So I think that's a very valid concern that we need to address, and it may be significant enough that we choose not to approve this request.
If we do that, we need that it's covered.
Right, we would have to be very clear on that.
This is a difficult situation too, because this person I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I understand this is hard for you to do this. It makes, I get it. But policy-wise, it really is.
Welcome to the board.
I mean, it just is. Doesn't make any sense policy-wise to say, yeah, take the money that was allocated for this child and give it to this other child. So, definitely have to make sure.
One other question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I just make sure clearly, like, this is why we're doing it, and this is from now on for the future. This is exactly how we're moving forward. No exceptions, or whatever. But go ahead. Sorry.
The new restrictions that the state has on a school being approved to their funding list, is that new for this year, or did it go into effect in the previous year? But it didn't affect him because the situation had already been settled with the previous school.
Right, the things have changed at the state level actually since the school year has started. If you go and you look at the list, the approved list is on the website, but if you look at the website under tuitions, they haven't put up the tuition, that won't get up until December, and that's when I expect that we'll see the differences between what's approved and what hasn't been approved, the impact is. For example, if you look at last year's tuition rates, you can still see the list of all the out-of-state schools that were there, that were approved. When you look at the overall list that we referenced in our policy, they're not on that list. But this family in the past has been able to petition the state to say, can you add these for these schools and have them approved, and they have been approved. And so that's where, the changes don't come from us, the changes were in our policy, the changes happened at the state level after the school year actually even started, with the intention of keeping main funds in Maine, not sending them out of state, which I also understand. But I can see both sides of the situation.
So it was, it's a change really that happened after our school choice applications were closed.
And when I asked the question of, is
But
the
before-
school on the list, and the answer is no, there wasn't a reason for the parent to believe that that'd be any different than the last few years when he was able to have this.
Right, because the policy hadn't been published as changed yet.
And it still hasn't, if you do like online searching, you won't see the change, you have to call and ask the questions at the state level.
That's what my
Okay.
big issue with this is.
And I can understand the parent situation where, they're anticipating the funding and anticipated a process that didn't work this year as it had in the past. But I also understand in our policy where it says the school has to be on the list, and so I can see both sides of that. I do think that if you do choose to approve it, that we just would need to clarify very carefully the policy moving forward. And then also when I look at JFABA, I think it's our most revised policy.
Yeah.
School choice has been hard, and I think that's another piece that our policy doesn't say these things aren't allowed. It just doesn't say that they are either. And
So,
that feels like an important clarification too.
and here's especially with the lottery coming, being anticipated in the near future, would it behoove us to require the school to already be on the list before approval? Because a situation like this where they were anticipating approval, but it didn't come through, could potentially not just impact them, but impact a student that wasn't approved because of space considerations.
My only concern about that is it seems like it's a year-to-year moving target of, schools that were on the list last year aren't right now.
Aren't right now, right?
But if we maintain that, that's part of the parent's responsibility.
Yeah, I just hate getting into the.
Interject a point of order, is that before we go on, we need to make a motion, or I'll make a motion that we, since we are past our
policy says that
mandatory ending, that
Oh,
we
yeah.
Policy
continue
says if
until-
there's an item on the floor, we continue that until we make that motion.
Okay.
As soon as it's over.
So, I think where I personally come down on this is to enact the recommended language from our lawyer, but to go ahead and make a one-time approval because the process was so opaque at the state level, and the parent really wasn't at fault. Our system really wasn't at fault. There was no way to know that the process wouldn't happen the way that it
And
was.
there's no net cost.
And there's no net financial cost. And if this solves making precedent-setting decisions, this language would
And including
do that.
that we will make this exception with one time, 1 year, and the lottery will still have to happen for
That the
the student.
second student still would have to apply as if they were not already in the program. I think I'm really comfortable with that, given the late nature of the changes to state policy.
I agree with
Could I make a motion to that effect, that that the language for the policy be amended as provided by legal counsel?
We will have to do that.
As a separate thing? Okay, sorry, well, I'll set that aside. So a motion to approve for this year only the transfer of funds with the understanding that the student is not guaranteed next year without applying as if the student was an initial student.
To clarify, when you say this year only, you're speaking
For the-
of the current
For the
school
current school year, yes, for the 2017, 2018 school year.
year. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Can we have a second? Motion's been made and second. Any other discussion on this? Any public comment on this?
I have a quick question. Jenna said it's a zero sum proposition. Can you explain that?
Because our school choice policy as far as financials go is that we provide the same level of funding that we would pay to the RSU. If the cost of the target school is higher, the parent still absorbs that cost. We pay up to the cost of sending the student to the RSU. So since this money had already been
Budget.
budgeted, thank you. It's a long meeting. Since this money had already been budgeted for student A, who can't use it, moving it to student B is zero financial impact to the existing budget.
But if we didn't spend that money would roll back into our overall budget.
If we
right?
didn't spend that money, the money would roll back,
Right.
yes. But what I'm saying is,
Right.
by approving this,
Right.
it really is a zero thing because of the unfortunate situation.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend.
Hold on. Hold on. There's a limited agenda to follow.
I know. I know.
I would like to make a motion that we continue beyond our 8 o'clock cutoff time. We do have some date sensitive stuff on the agenda, and I don't think it's going to be much more than 5 minutes or a half hour. I would make a motion we march on even though it's past 8.
Is there more?
All in favor?
Is
this done now?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
As long as you guys can deal with them, I will stick it.
Oh, that'd be perfect. 15.4, emergency grant fund update. You'll remember at our last meeting, there was some general discussion about the storm. Bob has done some great research for us. I want to give him the opportunity to kind of update the board on what he's found regarding grant funds and generators.
Okay, I'll try to keep this short.
What's this?
Basically, I contacted Jane Craig, and she very graciously set her aides to try to find appropriate methods to fund something like a generator or other source of emergency power. And they came back with a process that is most likely to be followed, which is the obvious agency is the main emergency management agency, but they go about funding the counties. So the actual place to approach is the Saginaw County Emergency Management Association. And she identified a contact, Sarah Bennett, who is the director of this for Saginaw County. I did call her and she has not returned my call, simple call. So if we're interested in pursuing this, I will go on. The granting agency or the grant would be the Emergency Preparedness Grant money. Very specifically, it's emergency preparedness. The guidelines, 2017 is closed out pretty much. 2018, the guidelines and rules and methods have not been published. As soon as that happens or the tax bill passes or whatever, board willing, I will go and pursue this and try to get specifics on that. That's really about all that I know. I have a question for Emily, because I can't remember the kitchen. Do we have gas into the kitchen or is that all electric?
We have gas for this.
Okay, so there's gas coming into the building. Okay, so that actually solves things. In conversations with Adam Garland, the township is very much interested and intends to replace the generator that is non-functioning at the time of emergency. And they are interested in re-pursuing the designation of the firehouse as a Red Cross emergency shelter. At which point, if that is declared, the Red Cross then bringing in equipment, staff it. And so there is no cost. That's a side issue, but it's something that we could consider or use as a possible argument. Firehouse is capped at 30 people, or was capped at 30 people by the Red Cross. Presumably the school, if it were not just a generator that keeps the power on, but actually could be an emergency facility, would presumably be able to house 2 to 3 times that many. Mostly a function of restrooms, but as I say, the township is aware of the potential damage to the school, had this been another time with different weather conditions. And they're also aware of the potential advantage of having a place that has not only handicap accessible bathrooms, but a kitchen, and that could provide some method of having hot food, etc., in case of such an emergency. So what I would propose is that we continue this and try me or whoever you designate to continue to contact Sarah Bennett and get additional information on the granting process for 2018.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see is for this item go to the facilities committee and allow them to start specking out the school, identifying, wiring challenges, circuiting challenges, gas challenges. That's why you gave it up. Huh? Let them do some of that legwork, start roughing out some costs. I'm sure first thing the grant proposal is going to be cost.
I'd like them to take that and start contacting, or that's up to you.
Yeah, or interface with you, or let's get that in front of them.
I have a contact with you and I know people.
Choose the director, yeah. The advantage of
Agenda
this
item
is
that
you
you haven't
can
had a
use
contact
both,
for. So we'll
Chamber Crate
send that back to
and,
the facilities
Is this
committee
done
for
now?
things in the near future.
and Susan Balloon, their name as they have been approached and are aware of this.
Thank you for all your work on that, Bob. That's great information to have. Definitely think it's a worthwhile project to pursue. 15.5, when the board was first formed, we had high school management come in and do a brief presentation, workshop with the board on responsibilities, legal requirements, legal obligations of the board, roles and responsibilities as it compares with other town departments, school staff. So I would make a motion that we do that again, and I would suggest the date of January 11th, 2018 at 6 p.m. here for.
I make a motion to approve the renewed board orientation on January 11th, 2018 at 6 p.m.
Has it been made?
Second?
All in favor?
That's easy, I can go for it.
15.6, 2017-2018 budget calendar. Oh yeah, I can't tell if it's flip my
I
copy.
think it's the very last page.
So in your packet is the proposed budget calendar. First reading will be March 7th. We would then have a budget workshop on March 14th. We will then go to, Finance Committee will go to the Board of Selectmen on March 19th to present our draft budget and review that with the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Advisory Committee. We're suggesting another workshop on the 28th of March to take that feedback and share it with the board. Then have our regular school board meeting on April 4th, where again we'll have a budget workshop as part of that. We will then go before the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Advisory Committee the second time on April 9th, to present any changes we've made since the first draft. And then we propose having our second reading and board vote on April 11th. And the final budgets must be presented to the Board of Selectmen on April 23rd. And we can approve the warrant, a special school board meeting on April 25th. And then the Board of Selectmen will go with a combined warrant on April 30th.
Did we already do this?
The town information meeting will be held May 15th with a town meeting scheduled for the 29th or 30th of May. And then the final step being the referendum vote scheduled for June 12th.
There is a difference from last year's calendar, and that is that last year we had our second reading and our board vote on April 4th, or what would now be the April 4th meeting, which is our regular school board meeting. But then April 9th, the Board of Selectmen wants to be able to weigh in again on the school budget, and they can if we've already voted on it. And so there is that change in having us meet again after that to do a second meeting and a vote. If we find we don't need to have a workshop on the 28th, then we can adjust that when we go, but that would be when it would be.
That's what we're looking at currently. We'll certainly keep it updated with the stream. 15.7 is the annual certification of superintendent's contract. I will make a motion that we add a year to the existing contract so that it remains a 3-year contract with the current superintendent. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? That is unanimous. We can certify that. 15.8, revise policy JFABA.
I would like to move that we amend the policy as advised by our legal counsel for adding paragraph to section 7, parent, guardian, student, and not like that FAU is solely responsible for ensuring that the school chosen by the school student has been approved by the Maine Department of Education to receive public funds. And to add a section 12 that says approvals for school choice placements are specific to the students receiving the placements and are non-transferable to other students, regardless of familial relationship.
That link actually does work.
And finally, to replace the link with working hyperlink.
Our link does work,
Alright, so that worked, but we can update it with that.
or we can add both.
Or that goes.
Move that motion, I'll second. That was a motion.
There was a
Motion.
I just wanted to read
The
that
motion is
on
to
camera.
revise section 7, add section 12, and change the link.
Yes.
That motion. Is that what you agree with in second? Any discussion on that? All in favor? Item 16, any public comment?
Just have a comment, I do. If the community crew is doing their raffle this month, so if you haven't bought a raffle ticket, please buy a raffle ticket.
Item 17, Wednesday, January 3rd at 6:30 p.m. is our next regularly scheduled meeting. And as we just voted on, we will also
Can
have
maybe do the
board
16
orientation on Tuesday, January 11th. The public is more than welcome to come observe.
Do we want to entertain having our board meeting after orientation, or do you want to keep those dates?
What says the board?
I think if we push
About
it
an hour
back
training.
though, we run into the same situation we just did with November, with a 2-week period between and then the January meeting ends up.
I'm sorry, I disagree,
No, it's just easier for me to set aside one night and be gone for a while than have two separate nights. It's fine, I'll do it.
Again, welcome to the board.
No, it's
Budget season.
I honestly don't.
I was just gonna stick out my, not anything.
So we're not changing. Gladly entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Second, third.
Okay, be ya.
All in favor?
Camera, blame me.
We are adjourned.
Alright, so just